Ever since the 1990s, there's been very little to watch on television. Of course, back in the 1980s, things were a lot different. There were many different programs, such as Dead Like Me and Falcon Crest and other programs, that ranged in between those, which were very good. One of the programs, which was my favorite, was a series called Max Headroom, 20 Minutes into the Future. Not too long ago, a company called Shout Factory finally put it up on DVD, and of course I got the series and was very happy to see all the old characters: Edison Carter, Theora Jones, Bryce Lynch, Murray Mackenzie, who was only called Murray in the series, plus the two blanks, Reg and Dominique. Now, I've noticed that there are no really good Max Headroom reviews on YouTube, and I was rather surprised. In fact, I was especially surprised to see that the Nostalgia Critic, one of my favorite critics on YouTube, and Decker Shadow himself had not tackled this particular series, which, as I said, surprised me quite a lot because they seem to be into things like that, and they're both very good reviewers, and I recommend you go and see their reviews on other things they've done. Now, I'm going to review just the first episode this time. Later on I'll review other episodes. The first episode is called Blipverts. Now, in the beginning, it starts off where Edison Carter, a reporter for a very prestigious television network called Network 23, has been pulled off a story for what he calls no very good reason. Worried about this and not about to let a good show go to waste, he decides he's going to do some more investigation, but his original controller, Gorrister, cuts him off, and he gets into a bit of a scrape with some local thugs and a security guard before hightailing it back to Network 23, where he punches Gorrister out and demands a new controller. While this is going on, Network 23's resident genius, Bryce Lynch, who I mentioned earlier, and who was played by a 1980s heartthrob, Chris Young, who also played in The Great Outdoors and in Warlock 2, The Armageddon, and The Runestone, is, and Matt Frewer is, of course, the Matt Frewer who plays Edison Carter, and also plays in several of Stephen King stories, most notably The Stand as Trash Can Man and as David Carter's father in Desperation. Anyways, Bryce has invented this commercial called Blipverts, which compresses 30 seconds of advertising into 3 seconds. Unfortunately, this has a rather bad side effect, which in turn, has been causing some problems, which he confesses to the board. And rather than taking these Blipverts off the air, the board decides that they'd rather risk it because it's allowing them to make a, it's allowing them to make a deal with a rather major sponsor called Zigzag, which is a mega corporation which, well, if you can imagine Sears, McDonald's, and Tesco's all combined into one corporation, which is, basically a worldwide entity, then you get the general idea. Their two favorite slogans are No, K-N-O-W, Future, and their more prominent and more honest logo, We make everything you need, and you need everything we make. Now, Edison doesn't know about this. All he knows is that there's been a rather nasty incident which he's not being allowed to report. So that night, with the help of his new controller, Theora Jones, played by the beautiful Amanda Pays, Edison sneaks into Bryce's studio, unaware that Bryce is hiding in the bathroom and basically watching his every move. Unaware that Bryce has cut off his computer from his camera, rather from his controller, Edison watches what's known as the Rebus tape, which has a copy of the Blipvert effect on it. Horrified, he makes his way out and is finally technologically reunited with his controller Theora, who tries to help him get out of the building with the footage. Unfortunately, Bryce is a little more clever than Theora in this case and manages to cut him off and run him eventually, after a rather intense cyber battle with Theora, into a barrier arm, knocking Edison out. Now, I don't know how Bryce got Edison back to his studio in the TV series. In the movie, it was Bruegel and Mahler who brought him back up to Bryce's studio, but they don't appear in the series until the second or third episode. I think it's the third one. Yeah, anyways, they don't appear until later in the series, and I don't know if Bryce got a security guard to bring Edison up to his studio, but the next time you see Edison, he's unconscious in Bryce's bed and with a gash across his forehead where he ran into the barrier arm. And Bryce has got him hooked up to the computer where he is scanning his mind. Now, Bryce suggests that they take the brain scan and convert it into a computer-generated person, very much like a computer-generated parrot, which he developed earlier on. Grossberg, who is the head of Network 23 in the first episode, agrees that this is the only way that they can find out how much Edison knows before they either just revive him and pretend nothing happened, or, you know, send him to the body bank. Like I said, Grossberg agrees with this, and Edison is scanned, and the scan, because the last two words he saw were Max Headroom 2.3 m, or 2.3 meters, when the construction becomes conscious, it says he begins to stutter the word Max Headroom, which of course Bryce dubs the creation as Max Headroom, and against Grossberg's wishes, he decides to keep Max as a pet project. Now, the problem is that Max is aware of the Rebus tape effect just as much as Edison Carter was. Edison has lost partial memory, or at least he's lost his memory of what's happened, and he wants to go back to Bryce's studio. The problem was that he was taken to the body bank afterwards, and when he is revived, he finds himself at Theora's house because she retrieved him while she was trying to find out if he was alive or dead, and discovered that he was in fact alive. Now, obviously, because this is the first in a series and Edison is one of the main characters in the series, as is Max Headroom himself, you know Edison does survive the rest of it. And in a wonderful revelation scene, while Grossberg at the end is announcing Edison's death, Edison does come and to the report and reveals that he is in fact alive, and then confronts Grossberg with the Rebus tape, or with the remake of the Rebus tape which Max has provided him. Now, this first pilot is based on a movie which had a slightly different cast. Bryce Lynch, who was an evil little jerk in the movie, was played by an actor called Paul Spurrier, who was very good at his job, but I liked Chris Young's Bryce better because he's more toned down, he's nicer, and he makes for a good wild card in the series. He's morally not reprehensible, but he's really amoral. He doesn't have, you know, he's not good or evil. He becomes better, he becomes more good as the series goes along because of the influence of Edison Carter on his character. Edison and Max both make very good leads. I guess you could say Max would be the, I'm trying to think of the word for it, but they're both very good leads, and Max makes a very good, well, you can tell that he's, as Cheviot deemed him in a later episode, Edison's alter egotist. There's a lot of things about the series which obviously didn't come true or came true on a better scale. Television and advertising, as you know, is out of control, and Max predicted both of those things. He predicted there would be, or it predicted that there would be hundreds if not thousands of channels with nothing on them except constant advertising, and that TV would be pandering to politicians. Fortunately, we don't have what's known as tele-elections, which come up in a later episode, but I don't think we would probably vote much differently if we did, because politicians are so dishonest that if we did vote on them based on their favorite TV shows, we would probably get just as informed a vote as we do now. But sticking with this episode, Max did make a very interesting joke. He said, you know how we can tell that network president is lying? His lips move. In the movie, it was how to tell a politician was lying, and of course the joke ended with the same punchline. You could make the joke just about anybody, really. Politicians, boards of directors, movie directors, me, well, maybe not me, but we'll have to ask the cat about that. But the point is that it was a very good series, and the first pilot was a wonderful, wonderful show, and unfortunately it got cut off after 13 episodes, actually only 12 of which aired. The 13th was ready to go when it got cut off at the before it was aired, because, well, they'll tell you differently, I suppose, but the last episode to air depicted television censors as anti-educational goons, which were trying to keep the homeless population uneducated so that they could take advantage of them. And the next thing you know, it's off the air, so draw your own conclusions on that. But Max Headroom, 20 minutes into the future, is available through Shout Factory, and if you get a chance to see it, I highly recommend it. And I'm signing off for now, and I will review the next one in a few days.